How's your Christmas been?
It's been good, yeah. Just went by fast.
With the way PBS is going, I would like to kind of start it off. Do you like the way it's turning out to be? Like with the direction and everything. Like we can go with the funny a little later, but with that in mind, like how do you like the? Do you like the way it's been going?
Yeah, I guess I am like hopeful and optimistic for PBS. The thing that like Iowa PBS in general have always done is they've been kind of innovative with like things that they have done, like as far as telling innovative stories with documentaries and having a place to kind of share non-commercial, removing kind of like the commercialism away from programming, and I appreciate that aspect of it. There are a number of things that need to change with like PBS, just because like we're seeing like a decline in traditional live linear television. People aren't tuning into broadcast cable and satellite the way they were a decade ago. And so it is the job of PBS to find those innovative ways to engage with new audiences in new places. And that means, streaming, that means YouTube, that means, being in all the social media platforms, and still at its core, being an educational institution that shares information with people freely available. So like all those things, like the mission of the place still needs to remain the same, but we need to engage and continue to engage in like these other places for streaming.
Mentioned like a really good point, like live. I think it's just live theater. I don't really. It's I can't really know the production words, but like you get what I'm saying. Like you mentioned how people don't like really turn in for like live action things, but like why do you think that is, or like what do you think it is like the like what time's changing, of course. What do you think that it does draw people in?
So I mean, like this, right? Everybody has one of these in their hands these days, and it's just like it's easier to access and to engage with media. So like I think that has been like the number one change. Broadband is becoming more ubiquitous; it's everywhere, and so like it's just easier to get access to things like YouTube and to streaming services and all of that. So yeah, I think, and then also like I think there's just been a change in like how people are consuming. So you might not sit down for, or I mean, I think people still will sit down for like a 2 hour movie, but that might be different than what it was. That might change is what I think I'm trying to say, as far as like, maybe shorter snippets of content are the way people want to
Yeah.
consume media.
Definitely, I think like with kind of bring Christmas, like Christmas Carol, and like those like the traditional movies. Those are like the at least the new exceptions, at least for the younger generation, because their parents probably make them.
Yeah.
So that I think that probably is a factor in it. But with you being one of the heads here in like PBS, like I believe you're in charge of the Iowa PBS stations, like with like with like controlling what makes it on streaming. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, what's your main goal for the program?
So my role is called the director of content, which means I'm in charge of like the programming, local productions, and just pretty much everything that goes out into the world. That's under my purview here at Iowa PBS. And so like I'm in charge of like kind of helping to control the schedule, the broadcast schedule, like when things air. So that's
Yeah,
one aspect of my job. The other one is just helping to manage all the local productions we have. Everything with like Iowa Life, Road Trip Iowa, all the local sports productions that we do for like high school championships coverage. That's all under my purview as well. So it's like managing like this big team of producers in order to tell those Iowa stories and whatnot. So that's really kind of like my job, and that's always like forefront of my mind as far as like how are we engaging with these audiences, and are we serving our audiences? And by serving, I mean like how are we telling like Iowa stories? Because like that's like I think one of the strategies as far as like we're seeing like decrease in live linear broadcast television. I think there's still going to be people who want to see themselves, who want to see their state represented in the best light possible, and that is an aspect I think Iowa PBS can really shine at.
Iowa is only just a factor. Obviously, it's not the whole thing. But do you think Iowa just basically, do you think Iowa's just like a it's just a playing factor? Like we only how does that all work from like from the whole the game, not from the
Yeah.
sidelines.
So PBS is like the big kind of like national brand, but it's not like an organization that dictates or controls anything that the local stations do. So like it's kind of like this loose federation of stations. So Iowa, Nebraska, California, all these like local universities and cities have like licenses that are non-commercial licenses, and we all pool our resources together to create funding or to create content and programming that becomes like the national programming, like Antiques Roadshow, PBS NewsHour, Nova, like all those things. So like PBS is like really just like this place to allow people to kind of pool all their resources together in order to have like national content. But I help manage a lot of that stuff. And so yeah, really it's about like making decisions as far as like we look at like strategically where are the needs at for this, like for us. And one of the things is like a local travel show right now is a good thing to be doing. We haven't really done a local travel show for over like 30 years. So it was time to make Road Trip Iowa. And like we used like the scenic byways as kind of like our blueprint for the first couple seasons. And so it was like a great way to like highlight individual communities and to kind of package together as like a full show. And that's actually been like one of the most popular programs we have on air, and it's great. I mean, it's beautifully shot. It's really cool. What I love about it is that everybody in Iowa is like, huh, I didn't even know that maybe that existed in my state. And now I've been inspired to maybe go on a weekend getaway to check out something new in their community. And that's really exciting. And, like I started out as a producer at Iowa PBS, like that was my job. And I was actually on a cooking show called Iowa Ingredient. And that was also awesome because one of the missions of that show was to show like all the cool things that you could actually grow in the state, not just like corn and beans, but all these amazing vegetables, produce, meat, eggs, all that stuff. And then how to use like these local ingredients in your own cooking purposes. And then we also highlighted chefs throughout the state, because that was the other really cool thing is like, it was like James Beard award-winning chefs living in Iowa. And so being able to like kind of like tell their story and to show like that there's a lot of amazing talent in our state. I think that's the thing that's like always really exciting is that people see that like, wow, I didn't know like that was in my community.
One thing I just honestly thought about this, I am curious. Well, like when you think of like at least like originally before like all this, before like when I would think of PBS, and I assume other people, I would seem like you'd think of like the Elmo and like stuff like like the little creatures, Snuffleupagus, Sesame Street. That's kind of how I used to think. I kind of, and I still do, but I have an open picture, but I was wondering how much of PBS is just like when you're putting aside that, like how much is it
for like the kids programming? That's a huge aspect of PBS, right? I mean, so there's like on our main channel, we air over 8 hours of kids programming that is educational, research based, and specifically made to help kind of inform kids. And that's everything from like Sesame Street, Arthur, Odd Squad, and all of that. And we try to, choose specific demographics within that. So it's like really important that we have content that's made specifically for like those preschoolers, maybe from 4 to 6 years old. And then we have like, Wildcrats that may be geared more towards like a 6 to 9-year-old. And then like another one is like a 9 to 12-year-old with like Odd Squad. So like, I mean, we're trying to hit all like these different demographics to show the kind of diversity of like everything from science programming, English programming, history, STEM, all of that stuff. We're trying to hit upon with the national programming that we have for kids.
So in majority, in summary, all you're trying to do is you're just trying to get as much like content spread around for every age possible.
Every age group, we want to like a kid, not that I want like a 2-year-old to be watching our stuff, but if a kid is watching, we want to have something available for them. And we also want like that adult who is 84 years old. we want to have content that's for them, made for them as well. So like there is like this wide gamut of stuff that we do showcase. Um, Everything from Sesame Street to Lawrence Welk to Nova, the science program.
Kind of speaking on childhood, I think it's like a good summary and like passing over. Kind of speaking on the age group, like could you give me a point of view on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I was born in Iowa, but kind of grew up in South Dakota. And I have some like really fond memories of like watching the program that I watched. It was on an ABC station in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was called Captain 11 on Channel 11. And it was just this guy that like I wanted nothing more than to go to this kid's show and sit on his studio set and to watch the cartoons and whatnot. And that's like just like this real like impression that I have it just buried in my mind, and I love like that aspect of it. So that was probably like one of my earliest memories of like local TV, and that like TV was made in my neighborhood. And I thought that was always kind of cool. Eventually I moved back to Iowa and finished out high school, and then went to Maryville, Missouri, and went to school at Northwest Missouri State University. And I had gotten kind of like the bug to start like creating content in high school. One of our first projects was like making, like a short film for our English class. And I fell in love with it. I just tried to figure out every single way, because at the time, like it wasn't like everybody had a cell phone with like editing software on it. So I was trying to figure out like, how do I get like this old VHS tape recorder that I have and get that stuff onto a TV so I can start editing it and manipulating it and doing all that sort of stuff. But I fell in love with it from a very early get, like at 15 years old, and never kind of looked back. And that's always been kind of like the thing that I've always loved.
When you mean like TV, do you mean like just like put it on TV for people to see, or how do you mean by that?
Yeah, I guess like on a TV screen at the time. Like, I mean, there was no like YouTube. There wasn't like a video platform available.
So that was the only way, practically.
Yeah. So like the only really way was to put it on a VHS and then share it with friends.
Like obviously PBS is on YouTube, of course. You can obviously look it up wherever you're at. But like for you personally, did you always feel like making shorts? Did you ever transfer over to YouTube possibly?
Yeah, I mean, we have everything on YouTube. Like, I mean, the main Iowa PBS page is like over 120,000 subscribers right now. So we got like one of those cool YouTube plaques that's sitting in our front lobby, and that's always exciting. So like, I mean, I know that is a growth opportunity. We know that. That's the great thing about YouTube is like you can find anything. And so if there's something that you're interested in, you can find it. And so for us, we as Iowa PBS, there's like a lot of cool places where we can leverage all the like skill set and expertise that we have in certain areas and make great content that fits like a YouTube audience. So a good example is Iowa, very rural agricultural state. Lots of like tractor stuff that we've done for the last 50 years. So we made a documentary called Tractor Wars, and like, there's like 3.5 million people who've watched that on YouTube alone, which is awesome, right? We're getting people from all over the world, not just the United States, not just Iowa, but people from like Russia and Brazil and Australia, because agriculture is worldwide. And I think there's a lot of people who might have a built-in interest in like these specific segments, and that's something where Iowa PBS can really shine.
Is it just like agricultural elements, or like why do you think people just like want to spend their time watching these, like, instead of maybe like a TikTok video or something, like, why did you think they spend their time actually being entertained by these things?
I think this is the beauty of YouTube. This is the beauty of like kind of like online anything, like the beauty of podcasting, the beauty of whatever. If you have an interest out there, chances are in the world there's somebody else who also has that interest. And the internet kind of brings people together in like these like real disparate communities into like a centralized location. So for me, a personal example is like I'm a huge Magic the Gathering fan, a collectible card game. Like, that's like a big thing that I've always loved. My buddy and I, we played it every single Friday night growing up in high school, and then like when we both lived out in Kansas City. And eventually we're like, we talk about this game all the time. Like, we should just do a podcast. And so a decade ago, we started a podcast called The Spike Feed. And out of nowhere, like, it got like on like Wizards of the Coast, which is like the main website or the main company that owns Magic the Gathering. They featured us on like their Twitter page, and that blew us up. And we all of a sudden were getting like 20,000 subscribers every single week, like unique downloads of our podcast every single week, which is huge. Like, we had an audience, and like there was a whole slew of people out there from across the world who also had an interest in listening to people talk about Magic the Gathering. And so like we had like a community of people from like Ukraine and Germany and Australia, coming to our podcast every single week to listen and to share like their love of this game. So that's like, I think the power of like the internet, of YouTube, of TikTok, is like, if there's an interest, you can guarantee there's somebody else out there who also has that interest.
If it's still out and like, I'm active, like, what's the name? I would be happy to put it down in the description for my lovely listeners to find.
So we haven't done anything active for like the last year, but it's called The Spike Feed, spikefeed.com. And it's just a fun podcast. There's over 500 episodes in our archive that you can go and listen to. So
you've definitely been like, you've definitely at least been rushing it, like, them working hard on it.
Oh yeah. Like, we try to be consistent every single week, have something out.
Yeah, that's always the key to success, I feel.
I was in high school in the late 90s and early 2000s. I graduated in 2001. So like that was like my era, and like everything was just starting to transition. Like I remember like our school got like one of these colorful iMacs, and like one of the first, like, it was like the cool thing, but it had a video card in it. And so we were able to plug in an old VHS camcorder and essentially capture all that media and edit. And we used at the time, it was just Final Cut or whatever, and that's how we edited our first movies and whatnot. In college, like I had a skill set that was both, I learned how to shoot on film, and so like darkroom skills and all of those things, like actually processing photos. That's something I did. In the audio department, I was working on the radio station, and we were still cutting commercials on tape, like literally cutting, like not like that's the term, right? Where you take a scissors or a razor blade, splice it, and then tape it together. And that's how you would like, sync together like radio commercials. So like I have that skill set as well. All this stuff was like transitioning to digital in that 4-year window that I was in college. So I think I got like the best of both worlds, where I have like these almost obsolete skills, but I'm very happy that I have those skills, because like all those fundamentals are still very important and inform everything, even in the digital world today. Having a script, making sure like you understand like the ideas of editing, the theory and the philosophy of editing, as far as like how two disparate things you can put together to create a new story. All those things, doesn't matter what format it is in, those skills I think translate across the board. And so I don't know, like it was an interesting time to be around in video production, audio production. And I'm glad I got some of those skill sets.
Like you said, you learned how to like directly cut footage, and like, well, it was in that like paper form, film form. Mm-hmm. But I was over break, I was watching the movie the Fablemans, like Spielberg's life. It was kind of based on him and everything. And I was I was watching that scene where like he was directly like holding up like this, and he was like cutting it, and he was like laying it. He was basically mapping it all out, and I was like, considering, like obviously I'm on a computer, where everybody in the world for the most part who does technology is on a computer or a phone or whatnot. I always thought it was like, I always thought that was cool, like just in retrospect, like looking at where we are now, because like I probably obviously I could do it, but it would take me a while to, and like obviously it would probably take him a while, so we probably both had to learn each other's like secrets, I guess you could say.
I love that film as well, and kind of seeing like his process and the inspirations behind everything. And and being able to see how he edited film back in the day, it was pretty awesome.
when growing up, were the computers like a big thing for you, like with maybe mid 2000s, or how did you get introduced to like
Yeah.
the media world and like filmmaking?
Like I said, in high school, like our school library is the first one who really got like the media room, and like that's where like we had Final Cut and Audacity, which is like the recording software, and like
Uh-huh.
so I learned some of those aspects in high school, but really got into it 2001 to 2005 when I was in college. And I was a broadcast major, journalism major, and so I was able to kind of use those skill sets, and really got into like Final Cut and Premiere and kind of learning those, and really developing the skills as far as like the editing side of stuff. On top of that, I was also in photography, and I really liked working with cameras. And so, with the journalism side, I was doing a lot of photog work, and then videography work as well. And that translated into like learning how to light and learning how to compose shots and just, all those like skills. Like, once again, like you can figure that out, but it was like really awesome at the time to just kind of sit down with professors and to learn like the physics of light and like how different shapes and sizes can affect the mood and really inform creatively a visual story, which is something that I've always really been drawn toward.
You mentioned like film theories, like like in like the like there's a theory for like putting things together. Like, do you think that's like the main thing you need to be like I guess a real filmmaker? I'd love to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts.
I so there's a great YouTuber named Casey Neistat. I don't know if you've ever watched any of his stuff. He's like the gold standard as far as like, but one of the things he said, because he was a filmmaker, but he was a YouTuber, right? But one of the things he said is like, ideas are cheap, execution is what matters. And I think that that's the skill that needs to be across the board for anything. You can have any amount of ideas you want. That's great. Like ideas, you can come up with them and they're free, and that's about it. But it's the execution of that idea is really what matters, and that I think translates to filmmaking across the board. You have a great idea, you're able to execute it in your vision, and then to share it out into the world. I think that's what really truly matters. That's something that's stuck with me. And when I think about like my own personal projects and everything, like I have a ton of ideas of things I want to try and do, but it's really about executing that vision, executing the idea. That's really the most important thing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But going more into your personal life, like what kind of family were you given when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I have three younger brothers. We grew up in like, rural South Dakota and rural Iowa. Not a ton of money or anything like that. My mom was kind of like she played guitar, but she was working in education. My dad is more of like on the business side of stuff. But yeah, we just grew up all over Iowa and South Dakota, and yeah, I would say like on my mom's side, she's the one who's really been supportive of like my music habits and my media habits, and really giving me the opportunity, or like not giving me the opportunity, but encouraging me to explore those opportunities. And my dad never, I mean, he never told me no or anything like that, but he was just more of a business mindset type of guy, and that's really his focus.
When did you get into music, if I can ask?
Yeah, like I mean, some of those earliest memories I have are my mom playing guitar, and I always loved that. And I remember picking up her guitar when I was like a freshman in high school and absolutely fell in love with it. And I haven't looked back since. I'm still like a struggling guitar player. I play every single day, but I love it. I think I love just exploring and learning things, and it's a great way to kind of decompress at the end of the day, and enjoy something I love, which is just music.
Have you ever played like a band, or do you just play by yourself pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, through high school, I was in a couple of different bands with some high school buddies and whatnot. In college, I was in some other bands, and then I played in like jazz band and whatnot. So I did kind of dabbled in that. And to this day, I still like, well, I'm not opposed to like, breaking up the guitar and jamming with somebody. But normally now I'm always like just playing with like YouTube videos or whatever.
Did your family ever leave a big factor on your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't escape your family. I mean, I think everybody has like some sort of imprint from their family, and I'm no exception to that. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of fond memories. I'm very grateful that my parents were both just incredibly supportive of me, and just gave me, um, you know, just allowed me to like to explore and find the things that I wanted to do.
What was like the reason media drew you into the idea of making this sort of career like at PBS, and like have you ever considered working at somewhere besides PBS maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I have worked at other places. I mean, I freelanced for a number of years down in Kansas City. I started out as a production assistant, worked my way up into the camera department as a film loader, and then a clapboard operator, focus puller, eventually getting to like a second camera assistant, which was a huge deal for me. So I really enjoyed that. We wanted to move back to Iowa, and this job at PBS came up, and I was like, I have to take this. Like, this is kind of awesome. I get to make short little films in the form of like a cooking show or a documentary or something like that. And there was just a lot of creative opportunity. And that being said, I'm in this new role now where I help support other productions, and help manage other productions. And it's own kind of creative challenge in some ways. It's not like as directly hands-on with like the filmmaking aspect of anything, or the movie making aspect of stuff. But I still get to do that on my own on the side and whatnot. So I mean, I have like my own photography studio down in my basement, and I am never opposed to like recording myself playing some guitar, and if along or doing solos or anything like that.
This question is and it's optional, of course, but I was wondering with like the fund with PBS's funding being replaced. I believe it was by Trump. Like, is has it been hard being in charge and taking care of everything around that, as well like PBS being placed worldwide? Have you found yourself being like worried for like PBS being like in the hands of childhood of many kids over generations, since it was aired like 1969, I believe?
Yeah, the challenges are great. Regardless, so rescission happened over the summer of 2025, and rescission was just like money that was allocated towards the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was removed. So that meant like all these stations, including Iowa PBS, lost a percentage of their funding. And for Iowa PBS, that was about 20% of our funding. Like, that's not fun, right? Like that is a hard thing. The thing that has given me some hope is that we had a ground swell of support, like from just like donors, people who do support us. So that was most important. Like, that was a great thing to learn over the last 6 months. On top of that, regardless of whether or not the rescission happened, this goes back to our conversation earlier. PBS has to adapt or die, right? And that means like, as like we're seeing shifts in like how audiences are consuming media, we have to be on the forefront of like how to tell those educational, inspirational, informative stories that have a local bent. So I think those are the things that, regardless of whether or not we had funding or not, those are the conversations that we have to have. So there is like an existential moment happening with PBS, with NPR, with local television in general. I mean, it's not just PBS that's like struggling right now. I mean, a lot of like the local news stations are also struggling, because it's just like there's a changing dynamic happening in this world, and change is just inevitable. So it's just like, how do we approach that change? How do we take all these this great institution that we have, and make sure that we're telling the best stories possible and getting those into the hands of people who need to see it? We have a number of ways that we're looking to adapt and to change. I mean, that just means like smaller productions, or having to scale back or cut certain programs. And that's one of the things that we are doing. It's not fun. It's not great. On top of that, people who are retiring or quitting, we are taking a real hard look at, do we need to refill these jobs, or do we just have to fundamentally shift like the people that we do have in places and put them into places that make the most sense in 2025 with a smaller budget, with a smaller staff? So those are all the things that we're doing currently in order to adapt. On top of that, I think just at Iowa PBS, there is like like I can speak on the production side since that's the department I manage, but just an amazing crew of people, talented, thoughtful, creative people. And that's the thing that's also really awesome is just seeing like the ambitious people go out, collect stories, come back and tell something unique.
You seem like you are really like passionate about like production and like PBS, all and filmmaking, all of that combined. Like, but what kept you sticking around? Sticking around, like I guess we could say for filmmaking, but just like PBS in general.
Yeah. I mean, it is to me like that we have the ability to tell these stories. The thing that has kept me around is, I mean, like I get to do some of the coolest things, like genuinely. Like I got to work on a documentary as a videographer, and one of the things was we got funding to go to Washington D.C. to record some interviews, and then we also got to go to the rotunda of the Capitol, and I was one of only two people, myself and the producer, in the rotunda during sunrise, and just seeing the sunrise hit the rotunda all by ourselves. Like that's incredibly special and something so amazing, unique. And then just to be like kind of like entrusted to go out across the state and to collect these stories and to share stories and to be kind of like intimate and personal with people that you might, they're just strangers, and to like learn their story, and then to be entrusted to take that material, collect it, re-edit it into a story that is thoughtful and true to that person. It's such a challenge, and it's so rewarding to do that and to then share that with the rest of the state. So that's like one of the things that always, for me, keeps me around.
Well, thank you for all of that. The Santa Claus here is being noisy, but thank you, thank you for doing this. Sorry, that was my uncle. I appreciate you giving me a second chance at this. I think you were very interesting for a guest, and appreciate you giving me a slice of your time.
I appreciate it. It's been awesome to talk with you.
Yeah, I'd love. Obviously not right now, but I would love to maybe do like a recap, maybe sometime in the future if you're like ever interested. If I could ever hit you back up.
You got my email. Yeah.
Before I go, when I say go, I give all my guests 15 seconds to share out a social website, practically whatever you really want. I'm gonna start counting down. 3, 2, go.
I think you should absolutely check out iowapbs.org, and then also the Iowa PBS YouTube page where you can check out like all the great content that's made, everything from Iowa State Fair, Market to Market, Road Trip Iowa, and everything else.